The morning sun poured through the wide glass windows of Willowbrook Diner, bathing the turquoise booths in golden light. Outside, the streets were already humming with the sound of engines, the world waking to another ordinary day. But inside, for one woman named Clarissa Hayes, nothing about this day would remain ordinary. Because in just a few moments, an act of courage she never thought she had would draw a line between fear and kindness, judgment and compassion, and it would change her life forever. If you believe in the power of kindness, in the strength of standing up for what's right, and in giving people a second chance when the world only sees their flaws, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to Kindness Corner, and leave a comment. Your support helps us spread these stories that remind us of the good that still exists in this world. Clarissa had been working at Willowbrook Diner for nearly 6 years. The little diner was her lifeline after her husband walked out, leaving her to raise her teenage son, Evan, alone. Each day was the same. Early mornings, the hiss of the coffee machine, the clatter of plates, and the smell of pancakes wafting through the air. Though her routine was simple, it carried a quiet dignity. For Clarissa's strength came not from grandeur, but from perseverance. She wore her uniform with pride, even when her feet ached and her paycheck barely covered the bills. That morning, a man walked in who drew every eye in the room. His presence was heavy, almost commanding. He had a long gray beard, his arms inked with tattoos that told stories few dared to ask about. His leather vest bore the unmistakable patches of a Hells Angels biker. He moved with a quiet seriousness, sliding into a booth near the window, his eyes carrying the weight of someone who had lived on the edge of both law and life. Some customers shifted uncomfortably, whispering under their breath. Others glanced at the door, unsure whether to stay or leave. Clarissa, however, simply picked up her notepad, forced a polite smile, and approached. She had seen all kinds walk through these doors, broken men, lost souls, dreamers, and drifters. To her, this man was just another customer. She poured his coffee with steady hands and said nothing more than a gentle, "Here you go." And for a brief moment, his stern expression softened, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. But peace shattered as the diner door swung open and 2 uniformed officers walked in, their faces tense with suspicion. The entire room stiffened as their boots echoed against the linoleum floor. Their eyes landed on the biker, and without hesitation they marched toward him. Whispers rippled through the diner like a sudden chill. People leaned closer to their booze, anticipating confrontation. The biker didn't move. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He just sat there staring into his cup as if bracing himself for a storm he had weathered too many times before. The officers ordered him up, their hands near their belts, their tones sharp and accusatory. The atmosphere thickened, fear pressing against every wall. Customers stopped chewing, forks hovered mid-air, and then something happened no one expected. Clarissa, with her trembling hands and fragile frame, stepped between the officers and them, and they were ready to drag away. Her voice was steady but soft, carrying a conviction she didn't know she possessed. She told them he had done nothing wrong, that he had simply walked in for a cup of coffee like any other customer. She reminded them this was her diner, her floor, and unless they had a warrant or a reason, they had no right to harass him here. The diner fell silent. Shock flickered across the officers' faces, and murmurs rose from the booths. No one had ever seen Clarissa speak up this way, least of all to the police. But she stood her ground, her eyes fierce with something deeper than defiance. It was compassion. She saw not the patches on his vest, not the scars on his arms, but the humanity in his weary eyes. After a tense moment, the officers exchanged a look, muttered something under their breath, and left the diner, their heavy steps fading into the distance. Clarissa exhaled a shaky breath, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She turned to the biker who stared at her in stunned silence. For a moment, he looked as if he might say something, but instead he simply nodded once, his eyes glistening with unspoken gratitude. He finished his coffee quietly, left money on the table, and walked out. That night, Clarissa replayed the scene over and over in her mind. She wondered if she had made a mistake, if standing up for him would bring trouble to her door. She tucked Evan into bed, but fear gnawed at her heart. She was just a waitress, just a woman trying to survive. Yet something inside her whispered that what she had done was right, even if it left her vulnerable. The next morning, Clarissa arrived at the diner as the sun rose, the air crisp with the smell of dew. She opened the blinds, turned on the lights, and prepared for another day. But soon a sound reached her ears, low, steady, and growing louder. The rumble of engines. Not one, not two, but dozens. She stepped outside, her hands trembling, and what she saw stole the breath from her lungs. Down the street, like a river of thunder, came a procession of motorcycles, shining chrome, roaring engines, leather vests gleaming in the sun. One after another, they pulled into the diner's parking lot until the entire place was surrounded. 200 bikers, their faces rough yet solemn, dismounted and stood in silence. Clarissa's heart raced as the men from yesterday stepped forward. He removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that now carried warmth instead of weariness. He told her in a voice both heavy and humble that word of what she did had spread. She had stood up for him when no one else dared, and for that his brothers had come, not to cause fear, but to show gratitude. The bikers filled the diner, every booth and counter seat occupied. But instead of chaos, there was laughter, gratitude, and the hum of fellowship. They ordered meals, tipped generously, and treated Clarissa with a respect that left her blinking back tears. Even Evan, shy and unsure at first, was welcomed with a playful ruffle of his hair and stories of roads traveled. The diner, once quiet and overlooked, now pulsed with life and protection. By the end of the day, Clarissa realized something profound. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, could ripple out farther than she ever imagined. She had defended one man because it was the right thing to do. But in return, an entire community of unlikely allies had risen to defend her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. She felt seen. She felt safe. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Speaks, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Your support helps us keep telling stories that inspire.